Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to the TCEC Season 17 Cup Finals. So, after winning this computer chess championship and also this top chess engine championship, Leela C Zero has now the opportunity to win all of these big three tournaments. Now, in this cup final will be played in the so-called bracket system, so it will be really sort of a quarterfinal, semi-final, final system, in which Leela C Zero, I think, it will again face Stockfish. I wasn't able to cover the last games between Leela C Zero and Stockfish from the TCEC Season 17 final, but the result was +5 for Leela C Zero. Leela C Zero outplayed Stockfish really in the final, so it's really the best engine that you can use in order to make progress in chess, because Leela C Zero plays really this perfect chess. Today I wanted to show you a great game from the round 1 against this other neural network based engine, Aliie+Stein. It's really a similar system like Leela C Zero, but I still think that Leela C Zero is much more powerful, and in this game you see also the differences between Leela C Zero and Aliie+Stein. So let's check out the game. We have d4 played by Leela C Zero, knight to f6, c4, e6 going into a Nimzo East Indian setup, knight to f3, and now c5 into the Benoni defense. And now after d5 we have e takes d, c takes d, d6, knight to c3, g6, the common theory of the Benoni defense, and now knight to d2. I've noticed that Leela C Zero has played now many times this knight to d2 idea. It's this so-called knight 2 variation. It is, I think, the best way to proceed against the Benoni, because of course the idea is to play immediately e4, but there is a positional idea about this move knight to d2. You never allow your opponent to play the spinning idea on you with the move bishop to g4, and our main goal, the main goals of the Benoni defense, from White's perspective, you see how Leela C Zero make this plan through. It's to play the move e4 and then somehow to prepare the move e5. The other positional idea here is also to put our knight on c4. In order to make that happen, you have to first block out the queen side with the move a4. Still, black will try a6, b5 pawn breakthroughs. So these are the main strategical elements of this particular opening. And as I mentioned, if White pulls off this e5 move, then it's of course a dangerous position, because the only weakness basically that the Benoni has, the Benoni defense has, is this d6 pawn. So there is the goal to crack that position. I'm pointing you out this because you see how Leela C Zero make that happen in the continuation of the game, how Leela will prepare this attack against this d6 square. So knight from b to d7, still common theory, e4, bishop to g7, bishop to e2, castling, and now a4. This is this idea to finally cement our knights on c4, but when that happens, also black's main goal can be to play against this weak e4 pawn. So that's why we would love to advance this pawn on e5. So one of the positional ideas from black's perspective is to create a blockade against this potential e5 square. So here rook to e8 meets immediately with the idea that white cannot jump on c4, because then your e4 pawn is hanging. In the game h3 played by Leela C Zero, and now we have g5. So you see, this is really a common idea in the Benoni. I've seen now many times players, maybe not in this particular move order, but many Benoni players play the move g5. It seems like an unnatural move, but it's really a great positional move, as you're not allowing this f4 move. Leela C Zero played many times this f4 move against Stockfish. Then, of course, with preparations, maybe I just wanted to imagine position, maybe after f4, knight to f3, and then maybe somehow crack the position around this e5. So far, it's not possible, because you see, this g5 is very important to prevent this f4 idea by white. If you try g3, f4 ideas, then you see you would have problems after castling. Then your h3 pawn is hanging, and one of the main goals, I'm sorry if I'm talking about much theory, but it was really an incredible game. I wanted to really introduce you into this tactics that will happen, of course. But first of all, I wanted to see this strategical elements. This g5, really, really nice positional move. It prevents, as I said, so many great attacking possibilities for white on the king side. So here, queen to c2 played. We have queen to e7 with again further pressure against this e4. Rook to a3. Also, many times I have seen this move in the Benoni defense, but you see also the importance of this move. This rook can really shift here on this third rank. Maybe it can even go on e3 if the position allows it, even further support a potential e5 pawn breakthrough. In the game h6, fixing the pawn, we have kingside castling by Leela C Zero, and now comes this knight to e5. Also common idea in the Benoni to keep really the position on dark squares compact, really creating sort of a blocking system, and that's what I meant here. This g3 f4 doesn't work because your bishop, black's bishop is aiming against this h3 pawn. So here so far, black has created a perfect blocking system on dark squares. Now black's idea, as I said, is to play the move a6 b5, trying to crack the position somehow on the queen side. Here, rook to e1, cementing even further our e4 pawn. That's our main weakness. So white has the main weakness of the pawn on e4. Black has the weakness on d6. So b6, which is a natural idea, because if you try here to play the move a6 instead of b6, then you risk that your opponent will block, like black blocked here the king side here with this move g5. With the move a6, you risk that white will block you out also on the queen side where you want to make progress. Very important positional move here by Aliie+Stein to play first the move b6, then a6. Then if a5 happens, then we would have the support and we would have this pawn storm on the queen side. So these are the tricky stuffs in the Benoni, really this positional preparations to finally get a breakthrough. In the game, knight to f1, also very important idea to shift our knight here to g3, maybe if the position allows it, even on this very weak square f5. That's also, now we're targeting further weaknesses. We have now the weak pawn on d6, but also weak square on f5 in black's position. So a6. Now there is a tricky line. If you, for instance, try g4 immediately, it seems like a dangerous move. But I've calculated now, and I used really now this engine, the Stockfish engine, in order to analyze the game. After g4, h takes g4, knight takes g4, f3, kicking away the knight. Still with some progress, if the position allows it, and a couple of moves to make this f4 work, and then e5. As I said, that would be really our main goal here. It seemed to me, why didn't Aliie+Stein play this move? Because I thought here that knight to f3 would be really a dangerous move, because there are always tactics in the Benoni. There are always some dangers discovered, because the main idea of the Benoni, main tactical idea, not the main positional idea, is to bring the bishop here on d4 and creating really some dangerous attacks on dark squares. But still, white can proceed here with bishop takes f3 after bishop to d4. Here knight to e3, or even better is here bishop to e3, because if you play knight to e3, then you risk this move queen to h4, attacking your rook. Still, this is defendable, but bishop to e3 is much more better. After knight takes e3, here knight takes e3, here queen to h4 can be again this possibility, but here I think white has a really nice defensive system with the move g3, queen takes g3, and now queen to g2 would solve all of the problems in white position after queen takes king takes g2, and now we're continuing the game with one piece up, still with the really healthy pawn structure, and we can again exploit them further, the further weaknesses here, this on f5, and now of course we will have also this h6 as a possibility to attack. So in the game, as said, after the move knight to f1, I just wanted to show you what could be the possible continuation after potential g4. It surprised me really why Black didn't push the pawn on g4, so that's why I was trying to calculate it. Here a6 was played, not this move g4 by Aliie+Stein, with the preparation to play rook to b8 now finally, and this main move b5. So because there is also one problem for white, because white is a little bit overloaded. This knight on c3 also to the defense of this e4 pawn, and also this knight is protecting this potential b5 pawn breakthrough. So there is really this tension in the game. Here bishop to d2 was played, now bishop to d7, preparing even further rook to b8 b5 ideas, knight to g3, and now comes knight to g6. Here bishop to f1, knight to f5. It seems now like a good move, but I don't think that it brings you so much, because there is really this tactical sequence. Black can really take bishop takes the knight on f5, e takes f5, now knight to e5, again cementing the knight, and this position is really now blocked out, because these knights are playing very important role in this blocking system. And the problem is this potential f4. It seems like a natural move to proceed here, to crack somehow the position for the bishops, to get this position open for the bishops. It leads now again into a very complicated line. G takes f, bishop takes f4, knight to f3 is even a possibility here. You have to take with the pawn, not with the bishop, because there is this battery on the e file. So now knight to h5 is a very, very dangerous move. You see how the game in the Benoni can be really tactical suddenly. So after the move knight to h5, bishop, queen to d2, queen to h4 would be sort of a attacking possibility, bishop to h2, and now very, very important move, bishop to d4. This is the main tactical idea, as I mentioned, of the Benoni, to get this bishop somehow active. Bishop to d4, king to h1 would be probably the possibility, but now knight to g3 is even a very, very serious threat. Or we could take this h3 pawn. So that's why in the game, let's go back here, bishop to f1 was played, so not this knight to f5. Here Leela decided to go with the bishop retreating, but also further cementing our e4 pawn. So in the game, knight to h4 was played, knight to d1, and now comes b5 finally. Leela C Zero played now knight to e3, and here again I stopped when I watched the game, when I tried to analyze the game. Why didn't Aliie+Stein take this pawn on e4? So it's of course hanging. The problem is, if you play knight takes e4, queen takes e4 will happen, queen takes, knight takes, you have to take, rook takes, but now a takes b4, a takes b5. That's the main problem, because you don't have anymore the rook connection on the 8th rank. So this is now, I think, a very, very nice position for white. The problem is you cannot even pass through, because rook takes a5 will happen. We'll simply take this pawn, and this pass pawn would be really a tough one to handle. So the rook cannot go behind this pawn, as the bishop is covering everything. So you see, this is not a possibility. Here bishop to h8 was played, and I was also wondering why, if this knight to e4 doesn't work immediately, why we don't close the position on the queen side, so then we could maybe take the pawn on e4. Then it again gets very, very nasty, sort of, because you have this very tricky move, rook to d3. Again, knight takes e4 is not a possibility, because we can play this very, very tricky move, knight to c4. You must here proceed, you must play the move f5 in order to support your knight on e4. After f3, maybe bishop to d6 is an idea, but now after bishop takes d6, bishop takes d4, c takes d4, of course will happen, but now bishop to b4. We can take this knight whenever we want, but the main problem is that we have another attacker against this d6, so black would probably have to retreat, but now it's time to take this knight after something like, I don't know, f takes e4. We have the opportunity to take this pawn, we have the opportunity to take also this pawn, so this would be really a total disaster here for black. So that's why you see still not a possibility to take this weak pawn on e4, it seemed to me that maybe Aliie+Stein can make something happen around this e4 square, but here Aliie+Stein tried bishop to h8, and now we have rook to a2. Bishop to g7, we have b3. This is a very natural idea because we want to stop black's advance on the queen side, because black has really this 3 versus 2 situation. That's the main goal, to create maybe here a sort of a pass pawn situation with the support of this bishop. This pass pawn could be really dangerous, with also some possibilities to maybe regroup a little bit, play something like rook to b8, rook to c8, wherever our pawn will be, on which file will be. Of course, we will support it with the rook. In the game, b takes a4 was played, and now bishop to c3, we have a takes b3, and now queen takes b3. Okay, Leela C Zero is down a pawn, but this pawn sacrifice was really a good one, as we can now finally, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that now our main goal is to play the move c4. We have deflected these pawns from the defense of the c4, and now after the move knight to c4, now we could really attack this d6 weakness and make our goal work, this move e5. So you see how Leela C Zero managed to get this plan through. Very nice pawn sacrifice in order to make this happen. Rook to b8, not a problem. Queen to c2, we have a5, and now knight to c4. Very important move in the game, as a4 was played, and now queen to d1, rook to b7, which is now a very important moment, I think, in the game, as again Aliie+Stein has lost the rook connection, which will play an important role now in the continuation of the game. We have now finally this cracking position, finally this move e5, finally make this pawn breakthrough. In the game, d takes e5 was played, now knight takes e5, queen to d6, creating a blocking system, because against advanced pawns, basically the best way is to create a blocking system. But the problem is that you should make blocking systems with minor pieces. You should place a knight on d6 or a bishop on d6. Then this blocking system would be a perfect one. But having the queen as a blockade is not such a good idea. You see how Leela C Zero will make that happen. Bishop to c4. Very, very tricky move, because this bishop is aiming against the king. It seems that everything is blocked out, but this bishop can come into the game very actively. Here, rook to b4 was played, sacrificing the rook. But I wanted to show you how important this bishop is, because if you play something like a3, just to move this pawn further, then you get knight takes f7. This is really a great tactical possibility that Leela C Zero has prepared here. After king takes f7, we have this move bishop to d6. You see how it's a problematic thing when you have the queen as a blocker. Here, after something like queen to f8, getting out of this dark square, getting out of the e file, then here d6. Now this bishop comes very actively into the game. Bishop e6, bishop takes e6, king takes e6. Let's see the possible continuation. But now bishop takes f6. You have to take with the king, and now a very tricky move, queen to d5, attacking the rook. If you protect everything, that's the line that I've analyzed now. It's really a cool line. After queen to f7, we have a very tricky move, rook to e7. Here, if you take, then we have this very nice deflection motif, knight to h5, deflecting the king from the defense of the queen. So here, king to f7 would be the possible continuation. But now it's time to take the rook. The queen cannot cover, as this pawn is very, very annoying. So we would love to, of course, cover with the queen. That's not a possibility. If we go on this 8th rank, then we'll lose another rook. So the possibility is to go with our king to g6. But now queen takes g7. You have to take here the knight on h5. But now g4, and you have to give up the queen if you don't want to be checkmated immediately. So it's again completely winning for white. So this was the analysis after the potential a3 move or another passive move. Here Aliie+Stein tried rook to b4, very, very important move to get this bishop maybe trapped, but now simply knight takes d7, we have queen takes d7, and now bishop takes b4, c takes b4, and now very nice move here by Leela C Zero to get this pawn storm on the queen side a little bit stopped, because these are two connected pawns. They're not easy to handle, of course. Now we want to stop them, and in order to make them stop, here, very nice move. You cannot, of course, take, because you lose a rook, so it forces really black to play this move a3, and now this pawn storm is blocked, so the pawns cannot advance. That's why I liked really this move bishop to b3. Now our queen side is solved. Now it's time to attack again with this heavy artillery, with our rooks and the queen, and of course with the knight, still with some possibilities maybe to occupy the weaknesses in black's position. So rook to c2, we have bishop to f8, rook to c6. You see how Leela C Zero activates now the rook. The knight is hanging, of course. Queen to d8, queen to d4, attacking twice, bishop to d6. Here queen to a1, staying on this very important diagonal, and now rook to b8, and now very nice move, rook to e4. There are now some tactical threats. We want, of course, to take maybe rook takes h4, then knight to f5, getting this knight very actively into the game, attacking the bishop, and create really some dangerous attacks. Here g4 was played. If you try knight takes e4, it doesn't bring you so much. Again, this knight comes very actively into the game. We have this weaknesses still with the dark square bishop on the board, but still you have this main weaknesses in front of black's king. The serious threat is now to play this move knight to f6 combined with the queen. This could be really dangerous for black, so this is not an option. In the game g4, this was really a desperate move by Aliie+Stein. Basically, in this position, it's game over, but let's see how Leela C Zero made progress. We have h takes g4, we have a2, another problem, rook to e2, h5, and now simply g takes h5, knight to g4, and now h6, deflecting the knight a little bit, knight takes h6, and now knight to e4. Now our knight can again come onto this very active square on f6. In the game, knight to f5 was played, but now rook to a2. Now we have also some rook to a8 possibilities. We have queen to e7, and now rook to c4. Still, we can, of course, try this move knight to f6. That's why bishop to e5 was played, but now simply changing a little bit the direction of the attack. Now we want to attack, of course, with the queen on the g file. So rook to b6, we have d6, advancing the pawn. This is now a simplification idea by Leela C Zero, trying to trade off more pieces in the game. We have knight takes d6, rook takes d6, and now queen to h5. You cannot create even a check, because this bishop and the queen are of course covering this very important square. In the game, knight to g6 was played, and now rook to a8. Now we have king to g7, and now very tricky move, rook to g4, because there is now this checkmate threat to play queen to h8. You cannot take with the knight, because the knight is pinned by the rook. Rook to d8, that's why we have rook takes, rook, queen takes, and now queen takes e5. Basically it's game over. Again, pointing out you cannot take. This is a very important rook here. King to h6, we have queen to f5, queen to d7, sort of I give you my queen move here, queen takes d7, and now knight to h8, rook to h4, and here f4, we have king to f6. This was, I'm not sure if this was mocking a little bit, but here after rook to h8, here in this position, Aliie+Stein resigned. So great attack, great positional game in the first place. Then after that, finding these tactics. This is really a great game in the Benoni. It's really instructive for me as I'm using now this knight tour variation. So it means in this I'm trying to see this more lines of this particular opening. So in this particular position to play this move knight to d2. Really nice positional moves. Now e4 with the preparation to play this move f4. You saw in this game that Aliie+Stein tried to block the king side with the move g5, which lasted for a little bit, but Leela found another way into the game. Great attack by Leela C Zero. I really enjoyed this game because I think it had all the important elements of the chess game. So it means positional play, tactics, opening preparations, endgame techniques. Really, the decoys, the deflection motifs, overloads. Great game. It's really one of the best I've seen in my life. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games played by computers. Here's the link, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.